If you're like me, you saw the trailer for Wonka and you were like, why are they even making this movie? It was like, ugh, the last thing I want is a prequel to the Willy Wonka movie. Now, it's not clear where this movie sits, whether it's a prequel to the Gene Wilder version, if it's a prequel to the book, or if it's a prequel to the movie that was made with Johnny Depp several years back. But they did it nonetheless, and here it is. It's interesting because the Doll Studio here, which is like the family of the original writer, actually has full creative control over this stuff. So they actually do get to do what they want, and they're not really interfered with by Hollywood. This is a very rare instance, and it's very interesting that they get to do this. Now, of course, the original author is no longer with us, so he can't actually direct this himself, but at least people who care about it and people outside the Hollywood norms are there. Now, that said, I still didn't want this movie. And the trailers really looked not appealing too. It just looked like a dumb rehash, and it's like, why are we doing this whatsoever? But I went and saw it anyway, and I'm going to give you my review right now, and I'm going to say you're going to be very surprised. So this is Wonka right here, and it starts out with Willy Wonka getting off a boat, like kind of as a immigrant into a big city, which I guess is supposed to be London. He ends up in some like gourmet sort of like food court area where he's trying to set up shop and trying to sell his wares, and he's doing it as like a magical grifter. He likes magic, he likes to grift, and he's out there selling his stuff. But it's not a grifter. He's a person who's actually just trying to sell his stuff and do good for people and make everybody happy at the end of the day. He's got a backstory, which is, a lot of it's kind of silly. And this is where a lot of this comes from. It's ridiculous. There's a mom who used to give him one cocoa bean every day, and like eventually on his birthday, they'd have enough to make a single chocolate bar out of it on their like boat that they lived on, out in the Amazon somewhere. It was very weird. Totally nonsensical, but a lot of the stuff was nonsensical in it, and that's kind of where the flaws of the film go to. Now, as I'm already criticizing this to quite the degree, it was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I think it's actually really good for families. There really wasn't a ton of like woke content or anything like that. I didn't see any lesbian, gay, whatever stuff in this PG film, which is refreshing. This is like the only film that this is happening, and most Disney movies are putting that content into it these days. So it was actually pretty clean, and that's really rough and unusual. Now, there were some suggestive sort of things between there's a couple as he comes to the city that takes him in, and there will be spoilers in this if you didn't want those. Sorry, we're just discussing the writing of this. There is a couple that dupes people when they come in, and they think they're getting free room and board, and they end up putting them in this like servitude contract for life. Now, again, it's like, why are they allowed to do this, and why is this actually being enforced? It's not really clearly gone into. So a lot of this stuff just like it happens, and it's done for plot's sake, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of depth to like the reason why of this. Now, if we are in England also, I gotta say, there's a lot of stuff that just like happens magically all over the world. Now, a big point of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was that like it was dreary outside, it was industrial, and everything was just kind of gross, and just a world based on just greed and war and dinginess. And Wonka inside had a completely different world of imagination in his chocolate factory. That was something just more pure and wholesome and good. And so the contrasting of the world was a big point. In this world, like this magic just happens outside. It happens everywhere. And that wasn't really so much the case in the prior stuff. So it looks like they just kind of abandoned any world building from what was happening with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And just there's no rules. The rules are just whatever the plot requires at the moment. And that's tough. Like there's points where it's like, I guess all these people can just do this whenever they feel like it. And it's just our imaginations that are limiting us, I guess. Nonsensical. But it's okay because it is just ridiculous. And of course, the whole premise is ridiculous to begin with. So it's like, how much stock are you going to put into that? Now, that couple, as I said, that was holding these people down, including Willy Wonka as he gets into town and grifts off him. They had a few suggestive moments, but it's something that likely that the kids are not going to pick up on. It was suggestive enough to where it was like, oh gosh, they're being silly, but they were not actually pushing I'd say anything that people would actually notice. Now he meets up with, of course, a young black girl who's smarter than everybody and better than everybody. This is my one criticism of the film, if this is like 1920s, 1930s England or whatnot, when he's arriving here, there's a lot of diversity here. It looks like 2020 New York City. So like, what's going on here? Like, not everything needs to look exactly the same, Hollywood. And in their efforts to make diversity, they make everything quite the opposite. It's monolithic, and it doesn't make any sense, especially when it's like a historical context movie like this. Of course, again, they don't actually state that it's in England in the movie. They make it maybe like it's some fantasy city, but the other Willy Wonka stuff never took place in a fantasy city, so that doesn't make any sense if you're looking at it from any kind of continuity perspective on that level. We're just supposed to ignore it and just see that the diversity is there, I guess. Very weird. There's another point at this. This girl is oppressed just like him. He teams up with her, and they both have a theme together if they've lost their mothers, which is actually really good. And this is where the writing is really solid. Of course, the world building stuff and the logical consistency, not so great. The personal character stuff, off the charts great. And this is where they really just hit it out of the park. So both of them had like kind of the same parallel journeys. Wonka helps her find her mother at the end. And of course, that's a very satisfying conclusion for the characters on this, while he builds his chocolate factory, which is doing honor to his mother. So I really like that because it's something that's it's blessing of the mother, which I really like. Of course, the fathers are dead, both of them, and just barely get mentioned in this. Aren't that's the subtle 2023 programming that we have to deal with everywhere. Like, fathers don't matter; it's just the mothers, and that's just it's just in the background. They just never mention them, and that's just how it is. So that is something, unfortunately, that Hollywood's fallen prey to. But again, it's like, it was never mentioned in the film. It's not like they're saying that their fathers abandoned them. They were dead. So so it's a big problem on that front. So at the end of it, the diversity thing creeps up again. The mother works at a place which is labeled Biblioteca Universidad, which is again like Spanish. And of course, she's black, working in a Spanish library, doesn't seem to speak Spanish, and this whole area doesn't seem like it has any Hispanic elements to it whatsoever, because again, I think it's supposed to be London, England. So it's like, what's going on? And on that front, like, half the people have the British accents, half the people don't. Again, it's just like, what? Please do some consistency on this level. But it didn't work. And that's the flaws of the film. But again, once you get past that and you go, okay, this is a kid's movie. And they're just, the plot line basically is there's these chocolate cartels. There's the biblioteca, right? And the chocolate cartels are just making it so that everybody's squeezed out. It's an anti-monopoly thing, which I really appreciate because I do dislike corporate monopolies and things like that. He ends up having to face off against them and try to sneak his sales with a ragtag band of people. And then they're trying to uncover like the dirty deeds of the monopoly at the very end. Really good stuff. The Oompa Loompa, of course, it looked bad in the trailer, but it actually worked out really well in the film. It was a good storyline and enjoyable. I'm trying to find some good images of that as we roll through here, but we don't have it so much on IMDb here. He's just kind of in the background there. Actually, a good plot point on that as well, as that tied in very nicely. And the character was actually pretty lovable and interesting, and added a lot of depth to like the Oompa Loompa lore. There wasn't much to them, of course, in the original Willy Wonka, and this kind of went into their backstory a little bit. It was kind of cool. Now, there was a police chief who was corrupt, and of course, making it so that Willy Wonka couldn't sell things, and he would just get fatter over the course of the thing, just much like harkening back to the chocolate factory. And it's against gluttony as a sin, and of course against greed as a sin. And we had people lifting up into the air just like the chocolate factory. So it called back to that. Some of the songs called back to that. Some of them were pretty new. I enjoyed all the songs. I'm not really much of a musical fan, but I thought this actually was done really well. And I thought the actors did a great job on that front as well. It ended up, when they broke into the chocolate factory of the cartel to try to expose their misdeeds, that the chocolate factory guys caught them. They did the thing. It was like a silly Bond villain sort of trope deal where they're pointing a gun at them, but they're like, "We're actually going to drown you in chocolate, Willy Wonka," and put them into this chamber so where they're slowly getting drowned in chocolate rather than just shooting them with a gun. But again, this is a silly movie. So silly things happen with that. And it was pretty enjoyable. So the end, of course, resolved about perfectly. The bad guys got their due. The good guys all had things work out. And of course, it just closed pretty nicely with that. So I started off with this review, of course, talking about a lot of the logical inconsistencies, the world building problems. That is 100% there. But again, if you just like view this as a kids movie and just some fun and the ridiculousness that ensues as just like really entertaining stuff, they came up with some pretty creative and fun concepts of this, and also did honor towards the old stuff. So that's pretty good on that front as well. And the actors did a great job. Saying did a great job. The personal plots were really what stood out of this, made you actually really care about Willy Wonka. And that is something that, of course, good storytelling is supposed to do. So has its flaws, but it was an eminently enjoyable movie that, of course, you can watch with the family and, of course, not worry about degeneracy in it, which is a good thing. So I call this an 8 out of 10 overall, a huge surprise, as I expected to really not like this going into it. Leave a comment down below with what you think about this. Hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be back soon.